And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Real America. I'm your host, John J. Sottilare, and standing his post on the Freedom Line is Mr. John Thompson. Good evening, John.
Good evening, John.
Yeah, it almost sounds like an echo, doesn't it? Oh, so we've had another very interesting week throughout not only the state of Florida, but throughout the country and the world, as we have more stuff happening in the Middle East. And we have stuff in Wisconsin. Wisconsin was a battleground unto itself this past week, especially today. And if you caught any of the news today, and we're watching some of the CNN and the Fox News and just flipping through the channels with those guys, it was incredible to watch what was happening out there. People just going nuts.
The new tone in politics is working really well with all the death threats that Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker is getting.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. And they jumped all over the Tea Party for their protests. Look at these guys. These guys are climbing through the windows, getting into the halls of the State House, and pounding on the chamber doors, threatening to kill them. I don't remember any of the Tea Party people doing anything like that. But what I noticed is flipping through the talking heads today and the mainstream media, I had MSNBC and I had CNN were really painting a nice picture of these poor people who are just being trampled on, their constitutional rights, their freedoms, they're just being so taken advantage of by these mean-spirited, nasty devils of Republicans. And then I go over to Fox News and I get the exact opposite of that story, how brave these courageous legislators are for standing up to this mob. And as I'm watching it, I got to tell you, they acted like a mob. They were very mobbish.
You're looking to the left, you're looking to the right, you're looking to the left, you're looking to the right, and then your head exploded. It's grown back, since then. But your head had exploded. Your wife was cleaning it off the walls. It was just too much to take. The hypocrisy. The mob thing is just totally whoa. Mobs on both sides. Anytime you have a mob of people, the mob acts to the lowest common denominator. Yeah,
and that's what we're seeing, and we're going to see now how that reverberates through these other states, like Indiana and New Jersey and down here in Florida. We'll see how it escalates and if one feeds off the other. And it's going to be interesting to see. I just hope no one gets hurt in any of this. That this is all idle threats and just people letting off steam and blowing their temper a little bit. But in the end, cooler heads will prevail. That's what I hope. But you never know.
Well, and we are very fortunate. I think that the unions themselves and all of their AstroTurf protesters that they had busted in from other states, I think the unions have actually done very well because there hasn't been violence. There hasn't been the kind of thuggery that you've seen even in smaller SEIU type events, union events. So there is something to be said about the length of these protests in Wisconsin. I mean, we're talking about 3 weeks of protest, and that it didn't really turn violent. Yeah, a lot of nasty things were said, and a lot of just real buffoonery. But in the end, it's not like the police were out there with riot gear to having to quell the crowd with force. So that's something that we can at least be happy with for now, and talk about at least that there's some string of stability left in our political system. Protesting is one thing to get out there and protest, but it's really hard to control the village idiot within your protesting crowd, and we should at least be happy that these protests over the last 3 weeks have not turned violent and have been have had the measure of civility that they've had. Not that there's been a lot, but at least it wasn't a full-out angry torch-bearing mob. So
Yeah, I think it's a matter of they haven't been able to get their hands on them yet. If they had come out of that room saying, hey, we want to tell you about our new thing here, that could have been tragic. So I think there's it's like I said, hopefully it's idle threats and just blowing off steam, but you got to be cautious about it anyway.
right. And John, it's amazing that the tone, the protest of these union people in Wisconsin was identical. I mean, maybe it was a little worse. I don't know, but it was at least the same in terms of having up signs that say, the nice juxtaposition of people from the Tea Party holding up signs that say Obama is a socialist, Obama is like Stalin, and these people in Wisconsin holding up pictures of Scott Walker with a Hitler mustache and swastikas. I mean, the juxtaposition there. I mean, so whenever one side does something that the other side doesn't like, it's suddenly everybody's a communist or everybody's a Nazi. Like, really? That's how it works. That's what our political discourse in this nation has become.
Yeah, and that's it too. We're so torn apart right now as a nation. It seems that everything has an over the top reaction across the board. And you look at this here at what's going on here with in Wisconsin and other places. You're talking about those public employees. Whether it's a federal or it's a state. In this case, like Wisconsin, you have state employees, and you hear them yelling and screaming that it's our right. These are our rights. You're trampling on our rights. And I'm listening to CNN and I'm listening to MSN, and they're talking about their rights. And I'm thinking collective bargaining isn't a right.
It's correct.
It's not a right. It's not one of your God-given rights. It's not in the state constitution. It's certainly not in the federal constitution. It's something that if you want to try and do, go ahead. You can't. It's not mandatory. The government can't say, well, he does have the right. Freedom of speech, that's a right. The right to keep and bear arms, that's a right. Habeas corpus. There are certain things that are rights, and there are certain things that aren't rights, like everything else. and this collective bargaining, this isn't a right. You don't have a right to do this. And the fact that you're an employee of the government, in this case, the state of Wisconsin, well, the state gets to dictate that. And today, what did they do? They repealed the law that gave them the right. So at some point, they didn't have it. They didn't have a law that gave them the ability to do this. And through the course of time, the union spent a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of energy, building up the right people to get into office so that they could get this. So I understand why the unions are really upset. They've got a lot of money invested in this, and there's a lot of money on the line. Because, right now, you have to join the union, and that those dues get automatically taken out of your paycheck. You don't have a say in any of that. You want to play the game, you got to play by their rules, and you got to pay by their dues.
How insane is that, John? How insane is this concept that people do not have a choice?
It's crazy. It's crazy is what it is. When you think about it, it's absolutely insane. But they really do believe that this is their rights. This is their rights that are being trampled on. And I'm sitting there and I'm pretty knowledgeable, and I'm saying no, it's not. But isn't this part of a bigger picture? Like we look at like a republic and a democracy, right? And everyone's talking about the American democracy. This is the American democratic process. And I'm grabbing my head going, oh man, if you only knew what you were saying. If you only had a clue as to what you were talking about. And I'll give you a thing on, I think it was MSNBC today. There was one of the congressmen was on. They were talking about the hearing they had about the radical Islam, right? That was today. Right. And a lady comes, she sits there, and she's one of the congresswomen. I can't remember her name, but I know her face, and the name just escapes me. She holds up her pocket Constitution, and she goes, this is a living, breathing document. And right there, she's got my attention.
Was it Maxine Waters or one of those people?
I believe it was. And she says, this is a living, breathing document. And she goes on to talk about the American democracy. And I'm just got my hands on my head going, how sad is it? It's one thing to say that the American people are confused in this whole republic democracy thing, and that they don't know the meaning of what they're talking about. They don't. Not only do they not know what a republic is and what a democracy is, they don't know the difference between the two, how those differences will affect them. They're just taught that talking point, American democracy, American democracy. But this woman's, she's a congresswoman, and she don't know. And I'm thinking, oh man, we are so screwed now. This is how bad it is. This is a congresswoman sitting there telling me that it's a living, breathing document, one. And two, it's the great American democracy. And I wanted to jump through the screen and just say, show me democracy. And then open that little booklet you got and show me the word democracy one time anywhere in it. Show it to me and I will completely agree with you, leave you alone, and I'll send you a check.
That's true, and it's. I mean, I don't want to jump around too much. We get to what you were saying about the union right. I've been saying this for weeks now. Ever since this thing started, I've been saying this over and over again. The unions don't have rights. You cannot have a collective right. There is no such thing as a right that exists because you have formed a group with somebody else. You have individual rights, and any right that you express as a group has to be sovereign to the individual. And so if an individual person, if an individual teacher cannot negotiate their own contract with the school system, the union cannot negotiate a contract with the school system because the individuals don't have a right. There is no such thing as a collective right.